Tents. Big Sky has been with us a number of times in the past, but this is a completely different DRI at a different lot. It's one of the 4 lots that we approved for expansion of the business park a few months ago, and Big Sky won the lease. They bid and won that lease. So this is a completely new project. We're going to do a pre-public hearing review of this. Our job is to see if it's ready for public hearing, help the applicant prepare, and then, of course, we have to vote on whether or not an independent traffic consultant is required. The second item is a compliance review of the Stone Bank building project, and I am recused from that. And as has been the case multiple times in the past, Fred will handle that as the hearing officer. So let's get started on Big Sky Tents. Alex, why don't you give us the overview and the planning concerns? Is Jim Eddy here?
I don't see Jim.
Okay, well, we'll proceed anyway. We'll see. Okay, there's Kate is here. I think that's number 8.
Send him a text. I know I did confirm this with him a week or 2 ago.
Okay.
I was going to want 1 second.
Okay, take your time.
Okay, well, we can get going.
Okay. And for the record, we have, let me see, Doug, Joan, Fred, Peter, Ben, and Kate, and Kathy Newman.
And Linda.
And Linda. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, we're at the max. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So as Doug mentioned, this is a new proposal for Big Sky Tents.
Let me interrupt a second. We now have Zoom user on. Is that Jim Eddy by any chance? Whoever you are, you have to unmute in order to tell us.
Hi, no, this is Rachel. I'm from
Okay.
Miller's. Kevin gave me a heads up about the meeting for me to watch. Okay.
Okay, this is that's a different leaseholder. Okay, thanks, Rachel.
Thank you.
Good, go Alex.
Okay. So new proposal for Big Sky Tents at the Airport Business Park. This is construction of a new building greater than 8,000 square feet, which triggers the MVC Airport Development Agreement as mandatory reviews. This is a pre-hearing LAPC meeting. The new building for Big Sky Tents will be on lot 2.40, which is one of the new lots that the MVC approved in 2021 as part of the Airport Business Park expansion. Shown in yellow here. This is from the assessor data, and I believe this lot still has to be, drawn more accurately from by the assessor, but this is the location of that lot. Closer view, it's an undeveloped lot currently, although there is part of a dirt bike track that goes into there. I don't believe that's an official use, so this lot will be developed officially for the first time. The application materials so far include a plan set with various preliminary plans, also a site plan, floor plans and elevations, and relatively detailed project narrative. In terms of project history, Big Sky Tents currently operates at 3 different locations in the business park, all on East Line Road, which is the road closest to Barnes Road. The company's operated there for about 20 years. I mentioned that this is one of the new lots that the commission approved last year, 2021. Big Sky Tents was last before the commission last spring for a proposal to expand an existing building at 26 East Line Road. That expansion was partially completed, but an approved new addition was not constructed. So I'll get to that in a minute. These are the three other Big Sky tent locations at the airport, 10, 15, and 26 East Line Road. The one that was approved last year was 26 East Line Road. The new project will actually consolidate 10 and 26 into the new building, so those would be vacated and made available for other businesses, and then Big Sky Tents would keep number 15. These were the lots that the MVC approved as part of the airport business park expansion. It was actually just these four here. This one up here wasn't part of the expansion. And this was the proposal for 26 East Line Road that the commission approved last year. So they approved this new addition here to an existing building that was never built, although the applicant did expand the second floor use in the existing building. These were the elevations for that project. Again, half of it was not built. The current proposal for lot 2.40 is to build a new 27,000 square foot steel frame building that would, from what I can tell, be the largest building in the business park. Also on one of the largest lots. The new building will include office space, showroom, bathrooms, dishwashing, laundry operations, and other uses. Also parking spaces and loading spaces for vehicles outside the building. Again, 10 and 26 East Line Road would be consolidated in the new building. Hang on, I'm actually getting a call from Jim Eddy. So just give me one. I apologize for that. So I need to resend the link to Jim Eddy. So if you could just bear with me for 1 second, I'm going to stop screen sharing and do that. Okay, I've resent the link, so hopefully Jim will join us in a minute. I'll just keep going with the proposal. So they would vacate 10 and 26 East Line Road and retain 15 East Line Road. As I mentioned, the new lot is one of the largest at the business park, and there would be room there for further development, according to the applicant. But there is no other development currently proposed on that lot. This is the general site plan. The new building is shaped like an L. You have parking in front and in back. There are vegetated buffers shown on all of the property boundaries, including the along South Line Road. This is that plan superimposed on the larger business park plan. Again, the property lines that are shown in this plan don't line up exactly with the assessor data, but they do line up with what we approved, what the commission approved for the airport in 2021. And in terms of distance from Barnes Road, the new property boundary is about 430 feet from the road and about 375 feet from the bike path. And we'll come back to this in a minute. Larger site plan. Again, parking in front and back. Also loading spaces. And I believe this is Jim joining the meeting. Floor plans. This is the first floor. And Jim, we're just going through the staff presentation.
Okay.
You've got the office uses and showroom in this area, and then the rest is just open for various uses. Second floor is all open. There's an elevator shown there.
Yes.
Exterior elevation. So this would have a similar appearance to other buildings in the business park. Combination of metal and cedar shingles. The shingles would be facing South Line Road. And just to cover some of this, the project is also subject to airport commission review, which will cover all of these items. So there's some overlap here with what the commission is looking at, but this is all stuff that is covered in the airport development regulations, just for context.
And lighting, outdoor lighting.
Outdoor lighting. Yep. So let's go through the planning concerns that MVC staff has identified. So in terms of wastewater, there will be commercial dishwashing and laundry operations, which is the water use at the new site. But that'll also be relocated from an existing site at 10 East Line Road. All of that will connect to the airport wastewater treatment facility. So nitrogen is not an issue. The applicant has stated that they currently use about 94,000 gallons of water annually. And again, some of that will be relocated from 10 East Line Road. So there wouldn't be any expected increase in water usage compared to current usage. We have a preliminary stormwater plan which shows storm drains, dry wells, and downspout system. Some of the pavement would be, at least some of the pavement would be reclaimed asphalt pavement. Again, there would be existing vegetation around the perimeter to increase permeability. In red is the preliminary drainage plan. Moving on to traffic and transportation. The applicants estimated that the project would generate up to 24 vehicle trips per day, including customer and employee trips from May through October. You have a parking plan with 12 employee and customer spaces in front, 11 in back for additional employee and truck parking, and then loading spots. I'll show that plan. The project would, again, consolidate other uses on East Line Road, so that potentially reduce traffic on East Line Road while directing more traffic onto South Line Road. This is the parking plan. So again, 12, 11. This shows 6 loading spaces. I believe the applicant stated 10, so somewhere between 6 and 10, they could clarify that in the back. And then there would also be pickup spot or drop off and pickup for customers who are loading or unloading small rental items from the building. In terms of energy, the project would have rooftop solar that would be expected to supply all the power needs of the building, electric heat pumps, and pedestal-ready infrastructure for electric vehicle charging. That would be installed fully once that type of vehicle is commercially viable for the company. The applicant has pointed out that this project will invest a significant amount of money into this property and also generate rental income for the airport, obviously benefiting the airport. It would also make those 2 other properties on East Line Road available to other businesses, and there is a significant demand for space in the business park currently. In terms of employees, there are 7 year-round and up to 25 seasonal employees, May through October. The applicant houses up to 16 of those in 2 houses. The project will allow for moderate growth, although there wouldn't be any expected increase in employment, according to the applicant. And as part of the DRI on 26 East Line Road that was approved last year, there was a condition that those 16 housing 16 employees continue to be housed. So I believe that would already be covered in that condition. It was the same.
Well, if he's relocating the business out of 26 East Line Road, there would really, although there's a DRI there, his business won't be there. So we probably want to
Okay,
incorporate that into any decision on this application.
right. Okay, this could be transferred. In terms of landscape, again, there would be vegetative buffers around the property lines, also granite retaining walls. We do have a map showing those buffers. This would be at least 20 feet along South Line Road, and I believe up to 90 feet in back here. Character and identity. So the project is located in the business park, obviously other light industrial uses, including Big Sky Tents uses in the immediate vicinity. The building will resemble others in the business park, although it would be the largest. We do have elevations and floor plans. This is just a list of other building sizes in the airport business park, according to the assessor data. The largest building listed by the assessor is 23,000. This building would be 27,000, so that would make it the largest. In terms of visibility, the property is relatively close to Barnes Road for the business park, but also there is an intervening commercial lot between this property and Barnes Road. And there's also about 180 feet of existing vegetated buffer along Barnes Road that's required to remain in place. Again, this shows the distances between the road, the bike path, and the lot line. And you can see all the existing vegetation. In terms of grading, according to the assessor data, this entire area is pretty flat. So you wouldn't necessarily be looking up at the lot from any direction. And the site plan aligns with what those current grades are. So I'll hand it back to you, Doug.
Okay. Jim, you have an opportunity to add anything you'd like regarding your proposal. If you think that Alex has missed anything.
No, I mean, I think he covered most of it. The one key benefit, I think, of currently I'm operating in these two buildings on East Line Road, one of them which houses our dishes and laundry operation and our office, and the other one, the new building down by the gas station, is all of the tents and tables and chairs and other supplies. So every day when we're loading trucks for our jobs, we're having to drive back and forth between these two buildings. And even though, it's probably 1,000 feet down the road, we're entering onto East Line Road, and on and off all day long, driving between these buildings to load our trucks. So I think that the benefit in traffic reduction is that by being in one location, we're not going to be doing that inter-building back and forth. And it's also putting us closer to the exit to the business park. So it's just, for us from this property, we're turning on to South Line Road and right out to Barnes. So that is the traffic benefit of it.
Do you have any specific plans for further development? You're building one building. It's a large building, but you got over 3 acres there. Do you know what you're going to do with the rest of it? I
may try to lease out the remaining portion to somebody who doesn't, somebody who's just looking to park vehicles or something like that, just to recoup some of that rent money because it's pretty pricey.
Yeah.
But I don't have a specific plan right now.
And would it be fair to say that although it will make for a much more efficient operation for you, you're not looking at a huge leap in business and employees. Although it would be great to have, it looks like all you're doing is making your business more efficient. And you would have potentially the same growth here that you would in your existing operation. So you're not projecting, from what I can see, immediately additional employees or additional wastewater use or anything like that.
No, no. I mean, like you say, of course we want to grow, but I think that the one of the limiting factors of growth is the employees and being able to house employees. So we try to, perhaps we're buying more equipment, we're always buying new inventory items, but which requires more space, but that doesn't necessarily mean more employees. I'm trying to grow while keeping my employees the same, just by being more efficient.
Okay. And you have enough trouble getting enough employees in the summer as it is. I've seen your ads.
Trying to get employees, trying to keep employees, and trying to house employees makes it challenging to grow here.
Yeah. Okay. We have a number of commissioners with questions. Fred, you were first.
Okay. I guess my main question here, my recollection when we approved these two lots, is they're actually at a higher elevation than the rest of the business park. So I think it would be important for us to see a contour plan of
I asked
this.
Alex for that, and he's going to get it. The real question is, what's the difference between Barnes Road and this site?
Right.
Yeah.
And also, I believe one of the conditions we put on approving these lots was that what is on them shouldn't be any more visible than the rest of the buildings in the business park. So from my point of view, that's the biggest concern I have about this, and what would be done, how it presents itself if it's visible from Barnes Road. And we don't really have enough information. And since the purpose of this meeting is to determine whether the applicant is ready for a public hearing, I think that's information that we would want to have before we go to the public hearing.
Absolutely. At the very least, we need a contour map and we need a site visit. No doubt about that. Who was next? I'm going to assume it was
Doug,
Linda.
should the contour map, how much area should that include?
Well, I think at least from Barnes Road up. I mean, we want to know what you can see from Barnes Road. This is back a long ways from Barnes Road, and there will be an intervening site.
That's right.
We also probably need to know what the view, it's not nearly as important what the view from South Line Road will be, since it'll be much closer to South Line Road. But I think the main thing is the view from Barnes Road. There's probably not a huge elevation change from South Line Road. Doesn't look like from the contours that were provided. South Line Road is roughly at 40, 49, 48. And the highest elevation here is, I think, a 50.
What's that grass we've got? Switchgrass?
I think that's what we need. Linda, you're next.
Yes. One thing I was going to point out is exactly what you pointed out, that there is a lot between this and South Line Road, Barnes Road, which will greatly affect the appearance of, that this has. But we still want to know what the building will look like.
Yeah.
I had something else. Oh, yes, I wanted to ask, he mentioned parking. Do you mean long-term parking, and what kind of permission from the airport commission do you need to do that? Is that an allowed use?
What kind of parking are we talking about?
Don't they have to come back for that, Linda?
What?
That would be, you're talking about the parking that he might lease to others. They would have to come back for that. It's not
That's
a part
true.
of his proposal.
Okay, I'm still curious whether it's allowed under the business park regulations.
So I'm not sure. That was just something I threw out there. I think you're allowed to sublease. I know that there are certain lots out here that just have vehicles parked on them and no buildings. So I'm not sure though.
Yeah. Okay,
that-
well,
that's-
I'm just was curious about that. And then I want to add, I hope this doesn't put me in conflict of interest. But in my yard, I have some lovely native switchgrass, which was harvested from someplace like your lot or the one between it and Barnes Road about 30 years ago. And if you've got some in there, you should, it's a wonderful winter, decoration. So try to keep it. I mean, if you people pay money for switchgrass, and it's nice native switchgrass out there. If it isn't already gone.
Okay, I'm not sure if it's there. Can I ask a question about a contour map?
Sure.
Is that something that I need to do, or is that something you guys do?
I think you ought to work with Alex on that and see if it's readily, it may be available in the public domain and we just have to find it. But you have an engineer who must have done your site plan. You could ask the engineer. They could, I'm sure, get it from their resources. So between you or Alex, we need it before we can go ahead with the public hearing. It should be something easily acquired.
And that's really just showing the difference in elevation from Barnes Road to my lot.
And to the extent it exists from South Line Road to your lot, but I think that'll be minimal. But yeah, Barnes Road to your lot, Barnes Road and the shared use path, which is in between Barnes Road and your lot. So that would be really what we need.
Okay.
It's not huge. I mean, I've driven that myself a number of times, and there is sort of an upslope from Barnes Road to where your lot is. It's not huge. Joan, you're next.
Yep, Alex may have provided this information, but what's the square footage of the two lots that will no longer be used compared to the proposed square footage?
You mean the buildings?
Yeah.
The two buildings, both of them are two-story buildings as well. So one is 7,500 square feet and the other is 10,000 square feet.
So that's 7, 10,
7.5.
including first, it's not footprint, it's square footage, storage space.
Yeah, I'm talking about square footage of floor space.
Okay, so, and what is the proposed new one?
27,000.
Is
Okay,
that
so the
floor
reason
space
I'm
on the
asking-
second floor?
Second floor is storage space on the proposed one as well.
Okay, so the
Thank you.
reason why I'm asking is because I know you said that you're not intending to hire any additional employees, but it's a material increase in square footage, which I'm assuming you're looking at because you have ambition for your business. And I don't really know what my question is, but you might not. What's the extra space for?
Part of the extra space, we are still storing, we're still storing equipment offsite. I have 4 storage trailers and another storage building that is holding equipment. And then in season, we still store quite a bit outside. We have flooring that we have to move out every season in order to have space to move. So probably 4,000 square feet of this additional, 9,000? 8,500. So about half of it is probably immediately taken up. And then there's an additional 4,000 square feet, which would be for growth, additional inventory, but also, we're expanding the showroom a little bit. We're trying to add an employee, place for them to eat lunch and things like that. So there will be some space for growth, but it's not a ton of space.
So what I think you or Alex needs to do is to provide a explanation for the additional space, just as you did just then. And it certainly could be part of Alex's presentation, and it would save you having to explain it, but he can explain that, you've got offsite this, and it's going to be taken care of in the new building, and a bigger kitchen and dining room, or, showroom or whatever. But I think that would be, it helps eliminate potential questions about impacts, possible impacts of a larger business. It won't be as large as might appear it could be.
Okay.
Not
And
that we
you
don't,
had
not that we don't wish you well.
just to remind you, we had, last time we did this about 6 months ago, you had approved an additional 6,000 square foot building at the airport, at the gas station location. And
Okay, so
that,
that should be part of the picture as well.
right. So we're not, this is part of this is replacing that. We're no longer doing that expansion.
Yeah, so as I said, I think what we need to have explained to us is basically what your space is now and how that's being transferred in the various locations, how that's being transferred to the new site. That would solve, that answers my issues or potential
Okay.
issues.
Okay.
Fred,
Just one more thing. I noticed on the plan, it looks like there's an extension of East Line Road that goes between this lot and the other new lot that was created. I believe that's what I see there. And it looks like the only access to this particular property are curb cuts off South Line. Is that correct?
That's where we're making, there's no access yet. I mean, this property is uncleared.
Right.
There is that East Line extension, and the other lot next door, they have cleared their lot and they're using that as their access. So, you know, I think we prefer to have curb cuts on South Line Road because we have customers that will come in and things like that.
Okay, but that is in fact an East Line Road extension and not a part of the other property?
I think that's a little unclear. I think we'd
Right,
have to
it
go
is
back
not
to the
really-
airport's plan.
Right. And it's not really your, it's
Yeah,
not
I'm not
really your
sure.
thing anyway.
I'm not
Yeah.
sure if I've got, you know, because I mean, it would be nice if we could use that as a truck access, you know, alternate truck access. I'm not sure that that's on my, I'm not sure what that is. It says East Line Road extension on the airport plan.
I think we should explore that with the airport before we get to the public hearing, or have that information, not before, but have that information available at the public hearing, what the status of the East Line Road extension is. And we could get that from the airport. If Kevin Brennan, the properties manager, will know that. Anything else from commissioners? Okay, one thing we have to do is determine whether or not the applicant requires we require an independent traffic consultant review of this. I think Mike Morrow was on this earlier. Mike, do you have a recommendation on that?
My recommendation is to waive the independent traffic review. It's pretty straightforward. It's a consolidation of a building or between buildings. The applicant, won't be unloading in one spot, running back to the other building to load back up, going back to the other building, pick back up. So I'll work with the applicant on just doing that quick little traffic review.
And it isn't retail, right?
Correct.
Yeah, so there won't be a lot of public traffic.
Exactly.
Okay, could I hear a motion to that effect?
I'd like to move that we waive an independent traffic study and go with what Mike has to say.
I'll second that.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Can't imagine there would be. Okay, all in favor of the motion to waive the independent traffic review, kindly raise your hand where Doug can see it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, it's unanimous. We've taken care of that. So what we don't have is a detailed landscape plan. We don't have an exterior lighting plan. We don't have a final drainage plan. At some point, you don't necessarily have to have them for the public hearing, but if you have some idea of how you are going to landscape, at the very least, the 20-foot strip between South Line Road and your developed property, you should give us some idea of that. You also might
Right.
consider you might consider whether 20 feet is really enough. That is what the airport requires as a minimum. You could certainly expand that a little bit to create more of a buffer. But I realize that that's what the airport requirement is. And, people paying the kind of rent you're paying want to get as much bang as they can out of the bang for the buck for the property. But that's a thought. Other than that, yeah, certainly at some point, unless we just let and when I say this, I'm not suggesting that the airport isn't up to this, but we could defer to the airport on the lighting and the landscaping, because the applicant must do them before, and actually has to do a 25-year drainage plan also before they can be approved by the airport. And their lighting requirement is the same as ours, probably because Fred wrote it for them.
If
I
they're
recall.
going to put together a plan anyway, I think they should present it to us, because we want our approval to be comprehensive. I don't
could
want
do
to
that also.
upstage the airport. I think we can go with what the airport approves, but I think it should be part of our decision.
Okay.
How much more comprehensive does it have to be than what I provided?
Well,
I
what you
don't know.
provided was just to show that you have a 20-foot buffer on South Line Road and 30-feet buffer around the perimeter, because that's what the airport requires. But other than saying it's going to be, we're going to leave it the way it is, you haven't indicated whether you want to do any plantings or how it will be maintained, or whether you will designate it as a no-cut zone.
It
and
has
those
to be
sorts of things.
designated as no cut, I think.
Yeah, I don't
But-
think they let us do anything.
Well, that might be
Well,
enough.
that's not
Yeah.
true. They let you plant in that area. They don't let you clear cut it, but you could have a designed planting if you wanted, but they just have to approve it.
So if you're planning to do a design planting, that would be something you'd want to tell us. If you're going to leave it just the way it is, uncut, undeveloped, you tell us that.
Okay, I can ask them about that. No, I was referring to the lighting plan that I
Oh,
concluded. Is that not sufficient?
I don't know. I didn't see it.
we'll
If
check.
it's most likely, if it's going to pass muster with the airport, it's probably going to pass muster with us. I think all you're going to have is exterior security lighting. It's going to be downward shielded. It's going to be 3,000 Kelvin, all of which is stated in the airport development regulations for the business park. I
This
don't
is-
know.
we do have a preliminary lighting plan. I can pull
Yeah.
it up if you want to see.
Yeah, I knew there was a preliminary one, and landscape and drainage. At some point, you will need finals for all of them. It's possible, if we find what you've provided to be sufficient, we would either defer to the airport, because you have to go through all three of those issues with the airport before you get permission to build. Or we could have you come back to land use planning with final plans for those things for approval. And that's something we can address. I don't know if you really need any more now. At some point you will.
Okay, I've ordered the 25-year flood
Mhm.
drainage plan, but that's still in process.
The engineer you ordered that from could probably provide you with the contours of the area all the way out to Barnes Road. So you might want to give them a call.
I don't know if we have enough time to wait for that.
Well, I don't know. Alex, when is this?
This hasn't been scheduled for anything yet. It could be on the 19th. And we can also look into our data to see if we have more detailed contours.
And as far as the contours go, Jim, it's not like we need an engineered stamped plan showing the contours. We just want to know what the elevation changes between Barnes and the site.
I would think the airport would have that
They
information.
almost certainly do.
Yeah.
I'll
Yeah,
bet it's in the public domain now.
I'll talk to Kevin Brennan at the airport, see if I can get it from him.
Yeah, and ask him also about, and Alex will too, about the East Line Road extension.
Yeah.
What that is. Okay, anything else from commissioners on this. I think for the most part, this is ready to go. And we will get it scheduled. Okay.
Okay, that sounds
Thank you,
great.
Jim.
Thank
Will
you.
we do a site visit?
Well, we definitely want to before the and probably when we do the site visit, could you just make sure that somebody stakes where your curb cut will
The
be?
corners and the corners of the property.
Yeah.
And-
I think that
I mean,
is
I think
doable.
we also kind of want to know where the building is.
That would be helpful.
Yes.
I don't know. It's undeveloped. Ideally, you would stake the corners of the property, the curb cut, and the corners of the building. And Alex will follow up with you on that. Hopefully, the weather will hold and we'll be able to actually make a site visit.
Okay. Is that something you're going to do, did you say in the next 2 weeks?
Well, if we're going to have a public hearing on the 19th, we would want it done before the 19th, even if we do
Actually,
it that day.
We can't do a hearing on the 19th because we need 2 weeks notice.
Okay.
So we'll be in touch about the next available date.
It will probably end up being a meeting in February then. Because I think the last meeting we're going to have this month, unless there's something I don't know in the schedule, is the 19th. That would be our third meeting.
How much notice do we get for a site visit?
We need 2 full business days for a site visit.
So can
Everything-
we make an attempt to plan for decent weather?
We can do that
I
next
mean,
week.
by that I mean not, driving sleet.
Well, what we need more than anything is for it to be staked so that it's worth going out there. It's not
True,
worth going otherwise.
that's very true, but it has to be something, we just canceled a site visit because the weather was so intolerable. We basically couldn't get out of our vehicles, so.
That is true. Well, that's all dependent on the weather, and it is January on Martha's Vineyard. So what the weather will be day to day isn't always clear. Alex will work on that. He's very good with that.
Thanks.
Okay, we're done with Big Sky Tents, and that means I am turning the gavel over to Mr. Hancock, since I am recused and will absent myself and go have dinner. Have fun, everyone. Have fun,
Okay.
Sam.
All right, thank you.
Take care.
All right, everyone. I just wanted to give a little bit of a preamble here. While this is titled compliance, what we're I think looking at is trying to identify some areas that we might feel need to be addressed before a certificate of compliance is issued by the commission. It has come to our attention that there are a couple of things that are not the way we might have expected them to be. So I think in our best interest and in the applicant's best interest to identify those areas, because there is no certificate of occupancy yet or completion, he can't be out of compliance because the project isn't done yet. That's what we're getting at. So what we're looking at is areas that we think might need to be addressed before those certificates can be issued. So, Alex, tell us what you got.
Okay. So there is a fair amount of stuff to go through. So I think it would be helpful if we could maybe just hold comments until we get through the staff presentation. So I'll just quickly go through the project history and then give a sort of status update on the project, including various concerns that have come to our attention that we have been working with the applicant to clarify. And as Fred mentioned, will need to be resolved at the point that the project moves forward with the certificate of occupancy. So there have been a number of modifications since 2021. 2021 was the approval of the full condo project, including 10 residential and 7 commercial units. That was later modified to alter limitation on rentals and to clarify things in the declaration of trust and master deed. There are also various changes to provisions within those condo documents. There was a further modification to eliminate one of the residential units and to alter one of the existing buildings, and to there was a required rooftop solar plan. I'll come back to that, but that was partially approved. There were also recommendations by the Tisbury Historical Commission that the LEPC approved per the condo project conditions. There was a site visit to look at paint color, trim, and other things, although there wasn't any vote required for that on the part of the commission. Again, a number of issues have come to our attention, features that appear not to completely align with what the MVC approved in 2021. The MVC executive director wrote a letter to the applicant last summer, just stating that an as-built site plan would be needed for review prior to the commission issuing any certificate of compliance, and that would be required prior to the town issuing a certificate of occupancy. Various action is still required for the condo project before the CO can be issued. That includes monetary mitigation for housing mitigation to be paid to the Town Affordable Housing Trust Fund. Also, a final rooftop solar plan, which was part of the modification that I mentioned earlier that was partially approved. That was approved except for the solar plan, and I'll come back to that. Final landscape plan prior to CO, and again, a final as-built plan for review. So I'll go through the various plans that we have currently. This was the approved site plan for the condo project. The buildings are labeled here A through D2. They were relabeled as part of the building permit application process, but we're sticking to the labels that were assigned for the DRI, since this is the DRI we're looking at. There was also a more formal site plan as part of the application materials for the condo project, which is shown here. The applicant recently submitted this as the as-built site plan, although this is dated December 6th, 2021, and the project is still under construction. So I don't believe this would be considered an as-built site plan, but it's a further plan showing where the buildings are intended to be. So I'll just go through the concerns and show some images to help illustrate this. There are, I think, 6 concerns that we've addressed. Some of these may be, negligible, but I just wanted to put them all on the table so that the LEPC and the applicant are aware of things that might come up or that will likely come up as any part of any compliance review in the future. So the first concern, buildings D1 and D2, which are the 2 buildings farthest east, sort of next to the town parking lot. Residential buildings, the bottom level of those buildings were intended for parking and to be open so that floodwaters could potentially go through. As built, both of those buildings have solid concrete walls on at least a portion of the parking level. That was not clear in the plans that the MVC approved in 2021. In response to this concern, the applicant has stated that from his perspective, those plans were only preliminary. I think the MVC has been clear in the past that the plans that it approves are what the applicant is required to build. If the construction goes beyond that or outside that, they need to come back for modification. The applicants also stated that the concrete walls are necessary for shear resistance in the event of hurricane force winds. The side of building D2, which I'll show facing the parking lot with the concrete wall, has been covered with a tall wooden fence. So you can't necessarily see the concrete from that direction, although the fence was also not shown on the approved plans, and the fence goes beyond the edge of the building. I believe there are also plans to extend that fence further toward the harbor with a gate for resident access. So none of that was shown in the approved plan. The abutter to the north, Mr. Stam, has argued or requested that the fence should be shorter and also not extend beyond either side of the house. So those are just considerations. I'll just go through the approved elevations for those two buildings and then photographs of what has been built. This is building D1, the smaller of those two buildings. West elevation facing up towards Main Street. South elevation, so this is the side facing the town parking lot area. So these were the elevations that the MVC reviewed and approved in 2021. As you can see, it's not, there was no indication or statement as to whether this would be a concrete wall on the bottom. The fact that these vehicles in this drawing are shown in dotted line, we may have inferred that that was going to be a solid wall, but again, it wasn't clear. Other elevations is east elevation facing the water. Again, you could have inferred that was concrete, but there were no statements to that end. And I believe the commission had a pretty clear understanding that this was going to be open and with cars in and out. So this is as built. This is the west elevation of building D1. South elevation. And south and east. There's a concrete wall. And let me know if we can come back to this, any of this afterwards. In terms of building D2, this is the larger of the two buildings on that part of the site. Same situation here. The approved elevations do not specify concrete, and there was an understanding that that would all be open. This was the elevation facing the parking lot as approved, with vegetation covering that open area underneath. The other elevation. So as built, you have this tall concrete wooden fence in front of the concrete wall that goes across. This is the east elevation facing the water. So the plan is still to have parking underneath there and for floodwaters to come in and out. This is the north elevation facing the Stam property and west elevation. So the walls on that are really the issue and potentially the fence. This is as seen from the Steamship Authority terminal. I'll come back to the fence in a minute, but the plan, according to the applicant, was to extend this further toward the harbor with a gated access way. These were the plans approved by the building department for building D2, just for comparison. So in these plans, it does specify concrete, but the commission never saw this. So this was what the town was presented with. So that's the first concern. The second concern has to do with the site plan and location of buildings. As I mentioned before, we had a number of different site plans, at least 2 or 3 that were reviewed at the time of the condo project application, and then a couple of subsequent plans. It appears that some of the buildings, are a little bit off in terms of what the plans show, although we don't have what we would consider an as-built plan to compare everything to. The applicant has stated that the plans may have appeared that way because some showed the sidewalk on the Stone Bank property and some showed the Union Street sidewalk off the Stone Bank property. So it depends on how you size them in that regard. We tried to superimpose all of the site plans that we have. So that's approved, also approved. And then the December 6th, 2021 plan. We also have this drainage layout plan that was submitted as part of another modification, which is separate from this, but the restaurant modification, which we're currently reviewing. So we tried to combine all of that into one map in terms of the building locations. So you can see they all pretty much line up. Although there's some, building E in terms of the original approved plan is a little bit off. I think some of these plans also included limited common areas in the building footprint, which was a little unclear. But, for the most part, they line up. However, when you compare to what we know so far about what's actually gone onto the site, this was last accessed today, but it's a Google Earth image from a few weeks ago, which shows the new building footprints. So building B, E, and F. So if we superimpose what was submitted as the as-built plan, some of those buildings don't really line up. So eventually it'll be helpful to have an actual as-built to compare everything to. The third concern had to do with building E, which is proposed as the new restaurant kitchen building. So as approved, that had a partial deck on the east elevation. And as built, the deck goes all the way across the building, so that was a change. Also, it appears that some of the elevations for building F, which is the one on Union Street, don't match the approved elevations. The applicants clarified that the deck of the proposed kitchen building was extended to cover a public walkway or a walkway into the bathrooms for the customers of the restaurant. So these are buildings F and E as approved. This is the east elevation for both of those. So we're looking at building E here on the right. You can see the approved deck went across about 2/3 of the way. And then as built, it's different. This is the north elevation of building E. And I'm sorry, that was the south elevation. This is the north elevation. So in terms of building F, this is the approved elevation facing Union Street. And again, the east elevation of building F on the left. And then as built, facing Union Street. So this would be the east and north elevations. The north elevation, just the fenestration and the doorways and everything don't match the site plan. I don't know if the commission is going to find that to be an issue. This is the west elevation, showing a big wall. I don't think the commission ever saw elevations for this side of the building when they approved the original project. So this may be, outside the compliance concerns, but just putting this out there. So this was the south elevation for building F as approved by the building department, and the north elevation on the right. So the plans that were approved by the building department do align more closely with what was built, except for building E, which still shows that only the partial deck. The fourth concern has to do with access to the property immediately to the north of the Stonebank property owned by the Stams. There was testimony by the applicant during the hearing in 2021 that He would work to ensure access to the property. The property has been deeded access through the town parking lot, from what I understand, but physical access is still impeded by a metal bollard and plantings. I believe the applicant has made some efforts to secure access, working with the owner of the bollard, but that hasn't been successful. The town fire department has also stressed the importance of having access to that property because access from Main Street is problematic, especially in the winter. If the fence were to be further extended, that might also, impede future access to the property in the future.
Understand whether or not a snowbird is something you can afford to be. Call us at 800.
If people could just mute for background noise.
Today. That's 800 393.
Bill,
Is that me?
I think that might be you.
Sorry.
Okay. All right, so that was one issue. The access would be, through here. That is shown roughly on the approved plans. And then, there's that bollard in the way and plantings. The fire department has suggested that that bollard could just be replaced with a removable bollard so that at least there could be emergency access as needed. There's not a lot of space there, but that has been raised as a concern. The fifth concern had to do with the solar panels. So as part of the modification M4 last year, there was a plan for solar panels on one of the buildings that was withdrawn during that process because the commission had some issues with it. And the applicant stated at that time that he would return with a revised plan. So currently, based on how the commission and the LEPC have been reviewing this project since 2021, there would still need to be a plan for solar panels to comply with, I believe it was condition 5.1 of the condo project decision, which required solar panels. That decision did say subject to historical commission review for the solar panels. And the historical commission recommended not to have solar panels. That recommendation had to go back to the LEPC for its approval, and the LEPC did not approve that part of the recommendation, noting that it couldn't delegate authority to a committee that did not, or an agency that didn't already have that authority, in this case, to approve or not approve solar panels. So the LEPC, didn't approve the solar panel recommendation and noted that if the applicant wanted to not install solar panels, that would require a modification. So that's what happened last year. A modification was requested and the solar plan is still pending. So that is another item for consideration. This was the wording of that condition requiring solar panels. This was the plan for solar panels on building D1, which was withdrawn as part of that modification. And there was discussion then of adding more solar panels on building B. But again, we have not received a revised plan. The last concern has to do with a transformer box on Union Street. There was previously a transformer box there, but it was relocated and slightly enlarged because the construction of building E would have made it so that an existing transformer box farther in on the property would not have been able to open. The applicant has stated that that earlier transformer box was on the neighboring property. Eversource, which owned the box, didn't have an easement for access. Building E made it impossible to open. And so now the transformer on Union Street is slightly larger and a little relocated, but that may or may not be an issue. The transformer box was shown on the approved site plan, the existing transformer. I believe the other one was somewhere in this area. Also shown on the December 6th plan here. And that's the new one. Just quickly, we do have comparisons of other approved and subsequent elevations. So building A is pretty much what was approved. There were some changes in terms of the fenestration. That was the approved east elevation. So it's pretty similar. Building B, which is the one right next to that. Again, that's pretty much as approved. This is that other part up there. So you can see that there are some changes made in terms of the doorways and windows. But that may or may not be an issue. Building C originally had the second addition above for a residential unit that was taken out as part of another modification. And so I don't believe there are any changes proposed to building C anymore, other than the separate restaurant proposal, which is under review. So building C, this is currently the west entrance and one of the east entrances. So I don't think much has happened to building C that would raise concerns yet. And then we have the full building permit set if anyone has questions about that. But I'll leave it there and hand it back to Fred.
Okay. All right. I think we've been very thorough here. I guess one of the obvious questions is what concerns that have been raised here need to be addressed by modification requests and or other things. I think it would appear that I think the biggest issue would probably be the full walls on the D1, D2 buildings that I believe, as I recall, were supposed to be entirely on piles and not on walls, is my recollection of it. I think the things like the transformer box are, I think we all know that Eversource is going to put those where they're going to put them, and you don't have a whole lot of control over that. So that, to me, doesn't seem to be as much of an issue. The bollard and access issue, I believe that is out of the applicant's control, because I don't think he owns those bollards or the property that they're on. So while it's not a desirable situation, I'm not sure that Sam is really responsible for getting them moved. But anyway, those are the kinds of things that I'm looking at. And I think what we're looking for is kind of a sense of the committee and what they think should be our approach and the applicant's approach. And Liz, I want to hear from you, but I'd like to hear from the commission members first. So I sort of saw everybody come up at once here. So Kate, you're on the top corner of my screen, so you get to go.
Oh, you're very kind. Thank you, Fred. My question really revolves around what are appropriate setbacks. In reading through the material ahead, I saw some difference of opinion on who owned the sidewalk on Union Street, for instance. So I'd like to have some clarity around what are the setbacks on this property and where should they actually start from. I feel especially after listening to Alex's presentation now, that there have been so many changes that I have no sense of what the commission originally approved when I wasn't on it, and therefore what should be going on now. I don't know what to make of all of the changes. You cited some of them. I see some discrepancies in what other people have said. I sort of feel like we're chasing something that is a little bit ephemeral, and I'd really like to have it be less ephemeral.
Okay.
I'll leave it there.
Linda?
I think it is in the best interest of the applicant and any future leaseholders, condo holders, owners in that complex, that the as-builts come back to the commission for approval, because someday down the road, someone's going to go into the registry of deeds to look to see what was approved there. And if it doesn't coincide with what was built there at that time, that could potentially be a big problem for the owner at that time. And so I just think we need to go through a process. I don't see changes that are substantive that would, in my mind, affect the benefits and detriments, but it's very important that the approved plans as filed at the registry match what is there.
Okay, and Ben?
Thanks, Fred. I can help Kate answer some of the questions she had. In the B1 district in Tisbury, there's no minimum lot size, there's no minimum frontage, and there's no minimum lot depth. The setbacks on the front side are 0, on the side are 2 feet, with a cumulative, and the rear is 4 feet, and that maximum height is 35 feet. So I don't think, as far as we know, and the building department would be the final arbiter of that, whether the setbacks are being met or not. You did not mention the solar question, Fred, that still needs to be resolved.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry. That was an oversight on my part. Yes.
Yeah, that's why I'm just bringing it up. And then and then I think the other substantive one for me is the potential for that fence to continue and clip the view from the public municipal parking lot and the steamship authority area. I think we want to understand how that would work. In regard to those foundations, we can bemoan sort of unclear drawings, and that is both on us and the applicant as the MVC. And to be honest, it's on the planning board too. We should have been way more on the ball with what we were approving, so that we didn't end up in this situation. With that said, those concrete walls are required for structural reasons. I don't think you needed to have the whole length of building, whatever one it is, D2, for the shear loading. But those are built, and I'm not sure how much you would want to get into adjusting those. But I think understanding the fencing, because when that was first presented to us, the idea was to leave the vegetated buffer between the property and the municipal parking lot as best you could. And from what I can tell is there's just one scraggly tree left there. And the fence obscures whatever vegetative buffer there was. And so now from the municipal parking lot side, you don't have a vegetative buffer at all. You just have the wood fence. And is there any plan, or does the fence land on the property line to add screening of the fence itself from the public side? So I think there's some questions around how the fence is resolved and the solar is resolved. I think a final landscaping plan would be helpful. I think you kind of almost have that. There were some changes to the concrete pathways that we talked about in regard to the restaurant project that they need to be updated on the plans. But I think between the solar and the fencing, I think those are the two most outstanding issues at this point that can be resolved. I would also say that in hindsight, we should be a lot more cognizant of what we're approving, and get more clarity before we approve something that's so nebulous. It was unfortunate to see the amount of AZAC trim that was being used on this project, and I would have liked to have not seen that happen. But that is on us because we could have been more on the ball. So I think there's blame not just on the applicant's part, but also I think on our part for not being thorough in the approval. And so that's unfortunate, but I think there's still ways to resolve those two things. I think the fence and the solar for me represent the most substantive and things that could actually be adjusted still.
Okay, and Liz, I promised I would get back to you.
I just wanted to respond to a couple of the applicant's comments about the concrete walls, but I don't need to if we feel that's not something that's.
I guess the question in my mind is, obviously, we understand walls needed for structural reasons, but what's unclear is if the extent of these walls impairs their ability to be flood through, which was the point of raising this building up to begin with.
Right. The reason for having open foundations is so that the flood water and the stormwater can disperse through them and not cause flooding at that site and cause public health and safety concerns. And also, structures that are located in the velocity zone, which is even closer to the water, are required to have pilings on all sides as well. So it's not something that is unusual, and there's closer to hurricane force winds as this property.
Okay, so Mr. Dunn, I believe it's time for you to talk to us. You're muted, Sam.
Oh, okay. I could address each and every one of these, but you know, I don't think anybody wants me to do that. But just a couple things. This is not in a velocity zone, and the walls are not required to be open on all sides because it's not in a velocity zone. So, you know, really what this is about is that you can't just put a building on pilings without doing some fairly heroic things with the structure. And you know, these buildings had not been, these are preliminary drawings. And, you know, I appreciate the position that you find yourself in now because, you know, really what's happened is over the last, I don't know, 10 or 15 years, this whole process has morphed from one that was where preliminary drawings were, you know, totally accepted, you know, really just sketches to show what you were going to build, to one where, you know, it's becoming ever more, you know, under ever more scrutiny. And, you know, I don't believe these drawings are definitive at all about whether these walls are solid or not. And the fact is that when we went through the, you know, structural engineering process, we found that we needed some walls for shear, and so we put some in, and we put them in places we thought where it was reasonable, and you know, we tried to, you know, make them work in all respects. With respect to the fencing, I've lived with this project now for several years, and these fences are very necessary. There is a serious security problem there. People wander into the property all the time, and it's not a good situation. There are homeless people hang out there. We've had teenagers in the buildings partying. It's just a very necessary thing to have some fencing. Now, you know, I appreciate that it has to be done with some sensitivity, and as we continue this process, I will certainly keep that in mind. But you know, I'm just trying to keep anybody from wandering onto the property that happens to be around the ferry dock, and I think that's important. So there's a very practical concern there. The solar, you know, I am not objecting to putting solar panels on these buildings. What I'm objecting to is that there's a very clear condition in your approval that says you would like to see solar panels, providing this is approved by the, by the Historic Commission. And they couldn't have spoken more clearly on this. They said they don't want them. They don't think it works. They think it's a, works against the notion of, of the kinds of roofs we had and the situation. So basically you say, it's sort of Kafkaesque, really. What you're saying here is that I know we wrote a condition saying we basically left it up to the historic district to say what they wanted. But, in retrospect, we're now saying that, well, we can just make that go away because of some convoluted thing about going back and forth between LUPC and so on. I mean, it couldn't be clearer, and I would encourage you to read it. Having said
Sam?
all, I don't object to the idea of some solar panels. I just don't like the notion that that the commission seems to be ordering this without giving due process to the notion, to the clarity of what was written by the commission, not by me.
Sam, that particular instance, we've been told by council that we can't designate our authority to other bodies. What it means is that we can ask them for their thoughts, but they can't approve them or disapprove them. Only the commission can do that. So we asked them for their thoughts, and we decided that we thought that it was more important to have them, especially on those shed roofs where their visual effect was pretty minimal. So if you're not opposed to them, I think, and we did end up in one of the modifications making that a condition. So I think, and again, you're not out of compliance because the project isn't done yet, but I think for everyone's the expeditious nature of getting this done, I think you should submit a plan for that.
Would you grant me at least that the condition is inartfully drafted?
Absolutely. We're very good at that. and we try and get better. Since we've been informed of this issue with delegating our authority to other bodies, we've become better at writing these decisions so that we don't have that problem.
And
So
I would
that's-
argue in this case that you didn't delegate to them, but you deferred to their opinion, and not in a way that said you'd consider it, but in a way that said it was up to them. So I don't know.
Which we can't do.
Yeah.
So there you are.
Well, so who's that on? Anyway, I don't want to quibble. I just want you to accept my comments, and maybe we all learn from them.
Yes. So I see some more hands again. I don't know whether I saw Ben first or Linda, but I think it was Ben.
Thanks, Brad. And Sam, as you think through how do you resolve that solar question, there are alternative solutions than having to put them on the buildings in the development. If the roof lines or even the plumbing vents that are now through the roof, become a problem for laying out panels, there are other ways that you could meet this requirement even off-site. And so it may be worth exploring some of those other possibilities to satisfy this.
I think we've come down to a point where at one point we seem to be in agreement that if I would put them on building D1, this would go away. And so I think I can do that. I think it's very well suited for it, actually, both aesthetically and in terms of exposure.
Well, if you're talking about on the north facing dormers.
No.
Okay.
The south.
Okay. All right, well, show us the plan. That's all we need.
Okay, Linda.
Yeah, I mean, this goes to what I was saying earlier about we need to have the final plans come back to us for approval so that going forward, what's recorded in the registry agrees with what exists on the ground. And I think that is extremely important. I think Sam is more than capable of providing such plans. And I don't know, I just want to emphasize how important I think it is that because, oh, yes, and that leads me to something else. You're right, Sam. Back in the day, we used to be more amenable to approving conceptual things. Once again, let us blame our attorneys. No, but I mean, I don't mean blame. I'm being snarky there. But the fact is, what we've been told over the years by our attorneys is that should anybody challenge it, and it could be the guy next door, or it could, who knows who it might be, anybody with standing, challenge it, that it is difficult for them to defend an approval of a concept. The court has to look at it and go, oh my God, does this meet the concept? Yeah. And that's why we've been pushed by the attorneys to approve more explicitly the real plans that really will be eventuated. That's,
I mean, it's a problem for both of us because it's hard to do totally detailed plans when you don't even have an approval of your project.
Yes, and we know, Sam, that when you're in construction, things come up.
And, you know, I'm a design build guy, which is not, most developers aren't, but I see something that doesn't look right to me and I want to change it. And that's
yes, but you should bring it back to us and say, here are the as-builts. Will you please approve?
I will be happy to do that.
So I think
see you.
I think
I do.
Again, to make the process smoother all the way around, Sam, I think what we need to see is a modification request for the foundations on the buildings D1 and D2, so that we don't even have a piling plan, if you will, a foundation plan, just to see where we are with those, and that's part of the kind of as-built process. But I think it is an important difference in those two buildings. And as Linda said, I think your thought was, and I remember from the discussions we had, you were pretty much thinking that this was going to be mostly pilings and discrete columns and not walls in your initial concept of it. And when that changed, I think that's important to let us know about. And I'm not saying anybody's going to ask you to tear the buildings down or cut holes in the concrete. I think it's just important that it's part of the modification process. I think if we do that, we've got the solar plan, and then also if you could, as part of that modification, talk about your fencing proposal along that line. And obviously you need to have some security issues, and I don't know if that's something you think is going to continue once the property is occupied, or if you're in a construction situation with no occupied buildings now, it's a different security concern than it might be once you get these buildings occupied. But I think those are all concerns.
Fred, I think where fenestration has been changed and porches have been changed, that should be brought before us for approval, so that someone 10 years from now looks in the plans, looks at the building, looks in the registry, they go, those don't agree.
think Fred was saying what I need to do right now as opposed to what we need to do, you know, when everything's done, so we can document the entire thing in its state.
Well, that might
Yeah.
be fair.
But I think yeah, the big things, the solar panels, the fence, and the foundation plan, if you will, on D1 and D2 are, I think, the kind of pretty major differences from what we approved. Extending the balcony to cover the entrance to the restroom. Yes, that's something that also is a modification. I don't see it in the same light as these other ones, but it is something that should be brought to us for approval.
Could he do the big ones now and the more aesthetic ones later?
Well, I think, I guess it depends on the executive director and what he feels is substantial to issue a certificate of completion or compliance.
Okay, yeah, but I think we should leave open the possibility that changes that are aesthetic and therefore important to us in the character, but which are not huge, could possibly be all wrapped up at the end when it's been done. It's the thought.
Right. I mean, I guess the thing is, Sam, I mean, anything you want to wrap into one modification request is one less thing you have to do at the end when you're
Good
trying to
thought.
get your completion.
Here, here.
I understand. I get your drift.
Okay.
This is how Sam makes his living.
All right.
Struggling
So
with
I think
us.
I think I think Sam has heard us and we've heard him, and I think we can proceed. Anybody have anything that they don't think that we have addressed sufficiently here? All right, let's call it a night. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.